Hi there, and welcome to Intangify, the podcast where we discuss intangible aspects of business. I am your host, Matthew Asbell, and by day I'm an intellectual property attorney at the law firm of Lippis Mathias in New York City. I run this podcast because there's a lot of aspects of intangibles that go well beyond the work that we do in law. And so I'm very pleased today to talk about branding and the value of intellectual property in a real business perspective. And my guest today, who will be helping us address that, is Mr. Eric Malka. Eric, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Matt.
So you have a really impressive bio and resume, and I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about what you're known for or what you've accomplished.
What I'm known for is co-founding The Art of Shaving and somehow revolutionizing men's grooming and barbering as we know it today. Today, I'm involved after exiting my business 15 years ago to a Fortune 25 company. I'm now investing in small up-and-coming brands with extraordinary founders that we can support and help create disproportional impact on their success. Our fund is called Strategic Brand Investments.
That sounds great. So it seems like we have quite a bit to talk about then between the story of Art of Shaving, how that came to be, and as well as what you're doing now with your strategic brand investments. But maybe you could start us off, in the early days. Who is this guy, Eric? Where did he come from? And why did he care about shaving?
It's all in the execution. I mean, shaving was just the opportunity in front of me, and I kind of became very passionate about the business of shaving that we created. But shaving itself, as you can tell, is not my thing. I come from a small tribe of Jewish people from North Africa. I was born in Morocco, as were my parents and grandparents and generations before them. Over 250,000 of us in Morocco migrated to other countries, primarily Israel, France, or Canada. My family opted to go to Montreal, where I froze my nuts off and decided, after a brutal, traumatic episode of 8 years, I decided to make my way to the United States at a very young age. I quitted my first semester of college and took a Greyhound bus to New York City. I was 17 years old, undocumented immigrant, relatively no education and very little prospects in life. That's how I started my journey as an entrepreneur.
That's definitely some start because, how you get from there to here definitely seems like it must be a twisted path. Tell us more.
I'm very grateful. It took me 24 years from the time I arrived at Port Authority in 1985 to the time I sold my brand to Procter Gamble and Gillette. So that was an incredible journey to experience, and happy to share some of that with you. I published a book that tells the entire story of my business memoir, if you will.
Oh, well, tell us about that.
The book is called On the Razor's Edge, The Story of the Art of Shaving. It's a pun, but it's really more than a pun because I feel that many entrepreneurs live on the razor's edge every day, where there's very fine line between success and failure. I was on the lucky side of it. Many are not. I became an entrepreneur because I was an illegal alien, as simply as that. I had no prospect for a real career, and I couldn't even get a job because I didn't have a social security number, but I could actually start a company and operate it and take profits as long as, immigration officers didn't deport me back to Canada. So that's what I did. At the age of 19, I started my first company, did fairly well. I was in the clothing business, which is kind of our heritage industry, as Sephardic merchants. And then from there, I went into government contracting, believe it or not. I joined a company that was manufacturing my clothes to help them with some very large government contracts in the early 90s. That's where I really honed my skills as an entrepreneur and seeing a business go from $1 to $50 million in a 3-year period was an incredible experience. But I wanted to do my own thing, so I left that, took a bunch of money. I felt I had, made it at that point in my life. I was very young and naive, and I decided to start a business of my own in the music distribution company, pre-internet, unfortunately, and fell flat on my face with my third company. Lost everything I had made up to that point. Met my lovely wife Miriam as I was closing that company, and together we moved to New York City. I moved back to New York City, I would say, from Miami, where we met. Within a year, we opened the Art of Shaving first location in the Upper East Side of Manhattan on 62nd Street between Lex and 3rd by selling our car for $12,000. So we opened the store for under $15,000, which was kind of a miracle in itself. But when you don't know something's impossible, sometimes, you have an edge. That's how it all started. My wife and I were partners in that business, co-founded it together. She was 22, I was 28. And the saga starts there for the Art of Shaving.
I have so many questions as a result of what you've shared thus far. I think I'll start with the easiest one, or at least what I think is the easiest one, because you started out telling us that you don't like to shave. And so, like, you met this woman, your wife, Miriam, and you guys decided to open a place for men's grooming. So is that because she was pressuring you because your beard was, scratching her face? What's going on?
No, she wasn't pressuring me at all. But there's a piece missing in the story, which is that when we moved to New York City in 1995, I had to get a job to pay the rent, and I happened to find a job in the men's grooming industry for a distributor of products from the UK, a distributor of brands, old-fashioned brands. Within those brands was one focused on old traditional shaving, and that was my introduction to the category. Miriam started to pursue her studies in aromatherapy and Eastern medicine, her passion in life. And one day she made me this oil to protect my sensitive skin, in addition to the shaving brush and the cream that I had adopted from my work. And that became the best shaving experience I ever had. I always had discomfort, like many men do. And seeing the category within my job that I felt had a real opportunity, and traveling to the UK, I saw a dozen of these shops in London that were providing barber services in the back and selling these accoutrements and products for men. I thought, hey, this could do well in the US, especially in New York City. There's nothing like it. So one thing led to another. We were both entrepreneurial. We both were very focused on changing our income status in life. And we knew that we wanted to start a business. So we decided to open a tiny shop and leverage my relationship to my employer to get products, shaving products to sell in our first store. Obviously, we didn't have the means to create our own products or the time. So we started with a small shop that sold third-party shaving products from the UK. So that's how I ended up. It's all opportunity. I was very agnostic when it came to the category. I went from surfwear to government contracting to music industry to shaving. For me, it was just a means to an end. And I became very passionate about the art of shaving because, we really infused it with things we were highly passionate about, which are quality, luxury, packaging, consumer advocacy, natural ingredients, most importantly. And these were the things that made us very passionate about the art of shaving, more so than shaving itself or men's grooming. So that's how I got there.
Makes a lot of sense. Obviously has a lot of luck tied into it, the path, that you got led to. But I imagine, whatever you would have gotten involved in, you would have somehow turned into some great business.
I believe execution is everything, right? The idea is simple. So yes, I agree with that statement.
I'd love to know, when Miriam and you were coming up with this, squeezing out your last dollar basically to be able to open this one location, did you have a goal or a vision? This is going to be across the nation. This is going to be 1,000 shops, or was it like, we're going to get this shop and see what we can do with it?
No, my first three businesses, my mindset was to create a humongous company. And in hindsight, I realized that the real turning point was after my third failure. Well, my third company that was a huge failure. I really changed that mindset. I was so insecure about my ability to succeed that I realized what's the smallest business I can start? How small can I do this? And I think that was the shift. And it became one of my principles in business, which is to think big, but to start small. And really starting small allowed me to control the environment and not be overwhelmed by the aspiration, long-term aspiration, right? It all starts with one step. So opening that tiny little shop really was that leap that could be built from. And, scaling is easy once you've created a business model that works, and you can create that business model under a microscope. You don't have to risk, millions of dollars and go big on day one. That was part of the luck, right? The failure became my greatest strength.
I think that's often the story that you hear. I often encounter entrepreneurs that I would characterize either as dreaming too big or dreaming too small. I've had this conversation with a few people recently, because there are the ones who have this vision of what it could be and how great it could be, and they want to invest so much, even in the work that we do. They haven't opened a facility in New York City or wherever it is they're located yet. And they're thinking about, how am I going to be a worldwide known brand? And let's go, obtain intellectual property rights around the world. And they've just blown all the money they've got.
Yeah, that's the biggest mistake I see.
The contrast is that I also see ones who dream too small, and they don't see the forest for the trees, or maybe they see the trees is the point, right?
When I try to help entrepreneurs, I try to find out what they really want in life and what they're willing to trade off for what they want. Because it's one thing to say, I want to dream big, but then are you willing to sacrifice 10 to 15 years of your life, to get there? Maybe no guarantees. So, there's nothing wrong with wanting to start a small business and keep it small. If you want to be $1 billion business, I mean, you might as well play the lottery, right? The odds are very, very low.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you don't dare to dream big enough, then you may not achieve the potential that you have, or you may not make the investments to move it where it could be.
100%, but it has to be what you really want. Because I know for my wife and I, that's what we wanted. And from one day to another in our 20s, we put our life on hold. We had fun because we were doing what we loved, but we didn't want to go out at night with our friends. We didn't want to throw parties at home. We didn't want to take vacations. We just wanted to bang it out at the office every single day. And we were training like an athlete. I mean, we came home and ate so that we could have the strength, and sleep so we could have the strength to fight another day. But if you want to have, an easier life, that may not be the path. But if you want freedom, freedom has a price. I mean, freedom only comes to those who dare to be entrepreneurs and to endure the ups and downs and the difficulties of being an entrepreneur. It's not an easy thing to do.
I can't imagine. I mean, I've had even my own ideas of things that I thought, that I thought I would pursue, and I never end up doing them. I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah. But
Matthew, you have a plan B, which is the kryptonite for entrepreneurs, right? You have a very good situation. You're an IP lawyer. I mean, you've had a great education. Why put all that, to waste and pursue this difficult path that has absolutely low probabilities of success, and it's just no guarantees?
some might say it's to achieve greatness.
Yes, and I give a lot of credit to people that do that. I take less credit on myself because I had zero plan B, you know, which is like throwing somebody in the middle of the ocean. You have to swim. Why would you otherwise jump out of your boat and sink it in the middle of the ocean. That makes no sense. And to those who leave comfort to achieve greatness, as you say, but you can achieve greatness as an IP lawyer. You can achieve greatness as in many jobs and many professions.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Take us back to the 17-year-old youth without much of a dream, just trying to survive. Because as you described that, your arrival in New York on the Greyhound bus, and needing a job and not being able to be hired because of immigrant status and all that stuff, it sounds like you were being a little bit humble, or maybe just skipping over the part where you kind of arrive at the idea of, oh, well, I know what I can do. I can start a business because that's the only thing I can do. And how do you did that? So can you give us a little bit more meat on that?
First of all, in my book, I talk about a concept called the chip on your shoulder, right? It's what I feel I've developed in my, I didn't have a horrible childhood, by the way. I know people have had much worse childhood, but in relative terms to mine, it was kind of traumatic. And I think if I had an easier childhood, I wouldn't be here today. So that kind of developed this sense of low self-worth and a chip on my shoulder that I think triggered a reptilian need, obsession to succeed and prove the world wrong. I think that is the greatest fire in entrepreneurial belly, is that chip on your shoulder. And it's not just kids from Montreal. It could be, Michael Jordan had a chip on his shoulder because he was drafted 198 or whatever it was. He just felt it. You can have a chip on your shoulder, and that's really becomes your driving force. It's not wanting to make money. I did want to make money. I wanted to build a business that had a purpose, but all that in hindsight was very mild motivation compared to my obsession to prove the world wrong about me as a human being. And I became obsessed. So it was a necessity. I needed to earn money. And I was told by a friend who was an entrepreneur that, I couldn't get a job, but I could start a company. And I had access to manufacturing, and I started knocking on doors and selling my services, and eventually turned it into a brand. I was always very brand focused, and my first brand was a surfwear brand, and I don't know if I realized that I was built for being an entrepreneur, but I know that I was made for it. I had these elements in my person that makes for an entrepreneur, right? I don't think everyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everybody has it in them, but I was lucky that I had that in me, and something through necessity and through information was triggered to become that.
This takes me kind of fast forward into your current life and your future, or the future, or today, because you mentioned that you run strategic brand investments. You are actually looking at entrepreneurs and and small businesses that you're investing in. I'm wondering how much of young Eric is there going, all right, I need to see the same fire that I had, the survival instinct, the chip on the shoulder. If I don't see that in this person, I don't know that I could invest in them. Is that play into it?
Not 100%. I look for certain attributes in people that I invest in, because I don't, I think it's less about the idea again as it is about the people I invest in and support. It's the founders, it's the execution, it's their ability to execute, it's their grit, it's their ego, lack of egos, and also my ability to mold them and coach them. Right? They have to be coachable. So they have to show certain aspect, but I don't need somebody that's traumatized from childhood to invest in. On the contrary, I don't think that's a model that would work well. But I do look for people that are driven and that are coachable and that have the ability to execute at a high level.
So maybe, as opposed to, you need to have the impetus, meaning the trauma that sort of makes you that way. You just need to have that quality, however you got it, right? The quality of the grit.
Yeah, I only get involved once they've already passed that stage, right? They've already started the business and they validated it a little bit in the marketplace. It's still very small. So they've already gone through that part. My goal is to help them avoid failing, which is very common in the first 5 to 10 years, and open doors, and ideally help them avoid mistakes and really have a disproportional impact on their ability to succeed in what they're trying to achieve. That's why I only invest right now very strictly in luxury beauty and men's grooming categories, because that's where I have deep roots in the industry that young entrepreneurs just don't have access to.
Okay, that makes sense. But interesting that you were like initially so industry agnostic, but now you take the experiences you have and you're sort of directed in that area.
Yeah, that's my risk mitigation strategy. I mean, the only way I can mitigate risk, because I'm not a tradition. I invest our own money. My purpose is to support founders. My number one goal is to not lose a lot of money doing it. So my third aspiration is to make money doing what I love doing and helping others. I mean, that's like the ideal world. So yeah, I mean, I'm highly focused on my industry. That's where I have the most impact on these businesses.
And how do you find these businesses that you look to invest in?
Through my network, through the industry, we kind of play under the level of the smaller VCs that are looking for 5 million revenue and up. Some go up from there. We like to be at the under, 1 million or under when we get involved. So we get referrals from all over the place. Unfortunately, the barrier to entry in our industry is non-existent at this point. You can start a beauty brand with $50 at this time. So, you know, you got to go through a lot of deals before you find the right one. And our criteria are very focused on the founders, who they are they within our network? Can we, are they vetted? If they're not vetted, sometimes it could take me a while to get to know them myself, right? So yeah, deal flow is pretty good, but at the same time, we don't want to have 10 new deals a year. We're looking for 1, 2, 3 max to build that portfolio, because we want to really get involved. It's not just writing a check and praying for returns. It's really finding people and companies that we want to get involved with. So we don't operate businesses, but we're very, very much in the weeds of what's happening every day in that business, so we can best support it.
Is there a business that you've recently invested in that you can share and tell us how it's doing or what you're doing there?
One of the businesses that we're most involved with is called Barbarinos, and it's basically the art of shaving 2.0, funny enough. And it's a business that was started in Italy. They have 20 locations there. It's pretty good sized business in Italy, and they wanted to expand the brand. And the way to expand the brand in our industry is through the US market primarily. It can be very daunting for Europeans to launch their brand in the US. So they approached me, as many men's grooming brands have in the past. And after getting to know them really well, I started to really believe in the business and in their ability as founders to execute. So we got involved about a year and a half ago, officially in January 2024, and opened our first location in New York City for them, which did extremely well. I mean, that location is going to do $1.5 million in year two out of 750 square feet. So, great success. We're opening 2 more locations. We supported them in raising $1.2 million growth capital to expand in the United States, which we also got involved with as additional investments. And we believe this brand is going to be in the 5 million range within 18 months. And it's positioned to become the luxury men's grooming brand in the world. My previous brand is almost nowhere to be found anymore. Procter has downsized the company, and I think Barbarino is going to take that spot, that white space that is there. So, very exciting times for that brand. We've also brought in some other strategic investors. We've been able to broker a deal to acquire this location on Madison Avenue. We've helped them strategize how to enter the U.S. market. We've supported them in raising their first funding round in the U.S. and expanding to Rockefeller Center location and Grand Central location, which was a bidding process. So we're now introducing them to Bloomingdale's and Bergdorf Goodman and to Ulta retailers. So we're really trying to be rainmakers within that small world of beauty and grooming. It's extremely exciting for us to have a positive impact on young entrepreneurs and also be involved with the business without having all the operational pressure and stress that goes along with it, which is more of, as to your point before, is more of a young man's game. You have to know different stages in life, man. As a 30-year-old, I was kicking ass on the court. I was winning championship. But as a 50-year-old, you put me back on the court, I get killed. That's not where I belong. I belong in the owner's box or on the coaching staff or somewhere where I can support the organization to win championship with my expertise and my connections and my experience. But I can't be on the court anymore. That just doesn't work. There's a time and a place. Cycle of life.
With you on that for sure. In my 50s as well and feeling it. So yeah.
Exactly.
Let's go back to Art of Shaving. Your wife and you opened the one location, Upper East Side. You had to turn this into, and you said it became easy once you kind of figured out the business model, but you had to turn this into this large mammoth of a brand that ultimately got acquired. Walk us through that.
I'm not going to say it's never easy, and it wasn't easy, but the stars aligned for us in a big way. If the stars don't align, you're not going to go big that quick. I mean, going from kitchen table selling our car to strategic acquisition in 12 years and with a luxury brand that's known pretty much around the world is really fast. It's really, really fast track. Even in today's digital world, it's a fast track. For a luxury brand, I mean, you can do that in tech, in building a luxury brand, that's pretty rapid. So the way we did that was building blocks. We took the right steps at the right time. We didn't try to skip stages. And our first store within 6 months became a sensation because the New York Times wrote a 2-page article in the Sunday Metro section on March 23rd, 1997. And as you know, back then, the New York Times was that's the way to go viral. The world knew about the Art of Shaving, tiny little shop on 62nd Street overnight. And our business blew up. It went 20x overnight. And that provided us the resources to open a location on Madison Avenue. And the Madison Avenue location was on 46th Street outside Grand Central. And that's when, the business started really, really blowing up. That location was extremely successful. And that gave us the resources to develop our own product lines and create and turn this multi-brand retailer into a luxury consumer goods company, and start really building that IP of proprietary products, brand awareness, and so forth. So those were the steps we took. From that point on, we started to expand our retail presence, one in Wall Street, one in Miami at the Bal Harbour shops. And at that point, we realized building a national retail chain was going to require a tremendous amount of money. We didn't want to go out to investors yet. And it was a perfect moment in time, as we found out soon after, to pivot our strategy to a wholesale distribution. This was around 2001 when the metrosexual movement started to go viral. And we were positioned as the leading luxury men's grooming brand. So every retailer in the country and beyond wanted our brand in their stores. So we started to expand extremely rapidly, first through Neiman Marcus and Barney's New York, which no longer exist, and eventually into Bloomingdale's and Saks and Nordstrom's and specialty retailers around the country, men's clothiers. We were sold in almost 1,000 third-party retailers by 2004, which brought us a lot of recognition, a lot of eyeballs all over the country. And we realized at that point that the retailers were just not aggressive enough in the men's grooming category. So we wouldn't be able to scale the business fast enough through that channel. And, our stores were doing $1 million plus per location, and Neiman Marcus was doing $20,000 to $50,000 a year, and we had to give them margins and support, and it was not a profitable business. So we started realizing, listen, if we want to really scale this brand, we need to go back to retail and take this show on the road nationwide. That's when we decided to create a concept that was adaptable to malls across America. So a smaller footprint, no barber services, or sometimes event-based barber services, but really a small jewel box of under 500 square feet that we could expand rapidly and generate high revenue through small retail footprint. And we started doing that in 2004. 2005, we raised capital with a friends and family round. We opened 12 stores with $2.5 million we raised. And the 12 stores did really well. LA, Dallas, we had, Atlanta, Miami, all this usual suspects. In 2005, actually, Procter Gamble acquired Gillette for what is to this day the largest acquisition in consumer packaged goods. $57 billion paid for that portfolio of brands. And in 2006, they came to us through a co-branded venture. We became the licensor of the Gillette brand for the premium marketplace. We were the first brand. We're the only brand that ever licensed the Gillette brand in the history of that company. And in 2007, we raised $15 million in capital in the Series A round to really fuel our growth. The rocket ship was ready. We just needed that rocket fuel. And by 2008, Gillette, P&G offered to buy the company. By the time we went into due diligence at the end of 2008, the Lehman Brothers collapsed, financial markets collapsed, while P&G folks were in my office doing due diligence. So they packed up their bags and ran to their cars. Not a good look for a business founder. We went from being, the darling of the industry with a textbook, growing 50% quarter over quarter to dropping like every other retailer by 25% overnight. That's when I had to tap into that reptilian kid again and fight my way out of that existential threat to my business and to my success. We were facing bankruptcy by January 2009. We went into crisis management mode with a great management team I had put into place. Fortunately, I found out I was well built for crisis management. Many entrepreneurs are very, very poorly prepared for that because we are optimists and we think that we can get out of the hole by being successful, which is not how you manage crisis. You manage crisis by avoiding it to get worse. By early 2009, the dust settled a bit with the financial crisis. We were able to bring P&G back to the table and close on this acquisition by May 2009, avoiding bankruptcy in the process, taking a bit of a nice haircut on the deal, but there was no throat cutting by Procter. They took advantage of the situation, but they didn't try to slash my throat, probably because they were good old, principle focused companies from the Midwest, but also because I wouldn't have let them take my company away. I would have gone down with the ship like a good reptilian entrepreneur as I was. So all in all, it turned out to be a good end to a good story with, obviously, there's always danger lurking in every fairy tale. So, without going into heavy details, that's how it happened.
So there's a transition, right, from being the successful entrepreneur, having survived through the 2008 crisis and being acquired very shortly afterwards, to strategic brand investments, because, you know, somehow you had to be going, all right, I've got a pile of cash. What do I do now? So how did you approach that?
While we were selling our company, we had two babies. So our first son was 3 months old when we signed the purchase agreement, and our second son was born 3 days after we retired from the company. So we really transitioned from being, entrepreneurial husband and wife team to becoming at-home parents with no jobs. And basically, I found myself in an interesting place. I had achieved all my life dreams, beautiful family, living in a beautiful place, money, healthy, young. I mean, everything anyone could ever wish for. Very grateful for that. But it was a transition nonetheless. I mean, our life was upended completely, turned upside down. I mean, imagine. I joke about it, saying we went from kicking ass to wiping ass. I mean, we were taking care of babies at home. I mean, we had no idea what we were going to do with our lives. Absolutely no idea. Again, I was agnostic. I wasn't that guy that was going to go and rebuild the same business again and again. So, I realized at that point, I approached that challenge the same way I would approach any new business startup. And, I put pen to paper and I realized, what are my priorities? What's in front of me? What do I have here that I can lean into? And I knew that my number one priority was my kids. My father was not around, and I wasn't about to replicate that, especially by a situation where the universe gave me, this opportunity not to have to worry about my work. So I was all in. I decided I was going to be a hands-on father for the formative years. My second priority was my health. Health was always important to my wife and I, but I had neglected it. And coming out of 15 months of an acquisition process, my anxiety, my weight, my health took a beating. So, I realized, health and wellness, whether it was mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, wasn't my job. And my third one was my assets. I need to make sure, this hand I was dealt, I wasn't going to mess it up. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that make the mistake of being sloppy after getting an exit. So those were my three priorities: my kids, my health, and my managing my investments. But I was not trained to be an investor. Entrepreneurs and investors are completely different animals. So you have to now shape yourself into a new animal, which is the investor, and really change the mindset completely, and go back to school. I basically went back to school and learned about investing, everything I could do, from taking classes at the University of Chicago or Business Harvard postgraduate courses, to reading every book about investing. And that became my job. Learning became my job. So by 2014, we founded Strategic Brand Investment. It was always my dream to become a venture angel investor. And we met these local entrepreneurs that were in the skincare business. They appealed to us. They said, with your experience, we'd love for you to help us with our business. The business was a disaster. It needed to be reshaped from beginning to end, but they were lucky. We had nothing else going on. So my wife and I rolled up our sleeves and completely reinvented their businesses. And it wasn't a model we could pursue, but we realized that we had the power to help others in creating disproportional success that they would not have without our help. And in the process, we 10x'd our investment in 7 years. So we kind of proved the thesis. We had to fine tune it. We couldn't, work 60 hours a week on a business, you know. So we started looking for entrepreneurs that kind of were far along enough where we could really get involved without becoming too operationally involved. And that was the beginning of SBI. In the process, I also started a family office to manage the assets that we had acquired. And that's been our life ever since, pretty much.
So I want to challenge you on on one of your sentences in that last segment, which was you said it's always been your life dream to be an investor.
Not life dream, but later career, I would say. When I sold my business, I always wanted to be an angel investor. I saw myself in that role. Also because I had the worst private equity firm you could ever have. I'm grateful that they invested in my business. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did, but they were such horrible partners that it made me want to become this angel investor that really was a different kind of investor for these entrepreneurs that are really vulnerable, right? And I see it every day. I could take advantage of these entrepreneurs every day of my life. I see opportunities for me to eat them alive if I wanted to, but that's just not my brand DNA. I want to be their protector. I want to be their equalizer, if you will. I love that movie, The Equalizer. I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm that Denzel Washington in the realm of business, where I come in and I try to equalize them, giving them more power than they have access to. So, without sounding too arrogant, I try to save them, but at the same time, I don't want to lose myself in it. So I'm really careful who I do business with and making sure that it's not somebody that's going to be a burden on me or somebody that's going to be a drain on my energy. And somebody that can, it's basically my analogy for my criteria is I want to help lift you. I don't want you to pull me down. That's my lens when I look at these opportunities.
As much as, I mean, I guess everybody learns from their situation and their experiences. And you described your absentee father and not wanting to be like that with your family. Then you described, the private equity firm in your business, and although they gave you what you needed, they gave you a lot of things you didn't need, and you didn't want to be that to the entrepreneurs that you are going to support. So it all kind of makes sense pretty clearly, based on the experiences you had.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a third one that I didn't mention, which is that before I started the art of shaving, I was always shocked at how I was treated in luxury retail stores. I would walk into retail stores and they treated us so arrogantly, so poorly. I swore to myself that I was going to be the consumer advocate, and I would always take care of my customer. That's been my pet peeve ever since. So yeah, your experiences, negative or positive, I think shape who we are. And that's why experience can only be earned. I deal with founders right now in their 20s, 30s, early 40s that are smarter. They're better than me in so many ways, but they can never have my experience. They have to earn that through, living long enough.
Yeah, that obviously makes a lot of sense. I'd love to know what kind of advice you would have to the business listeners watching this podcast. What's the message they should take home? If they could go out with you for a coffee, or you want to get that take home message, what is it for you?
I'm developing a proprietary framework for startups to achieve greatness, and it's called crawl, walk, run, and fly. Those are the 4 stages of building a business. What I see most often as a mistake is they try to go from walk to fly or from crawl to run, and they fall flat on their faces. I work based on principles more than situation that can be applied to any business and anyone. And, that goes back to execution is the key. Start small, but think big. Crawl walk, run, then fly. Respect those stages of the evolution of your business. Um, these are things, and the greatest asset, and I think that speaks to your podcast, the greatest asset you have in your company to develop are the intangible intellectual properties that don't really show up on your balance sheet. After the acquisition, I looked at P&G's allocation of funds, and it was 95% goodwill. They couldn't care less about my balance sheet assets, inventory, leases, all these things were worthless. But the brand logo, the product formulation, the relationship we had with the consumer, that was really, really valuable. Even in the financial crisis, it had tremendous value. We were losing $500,000 a month in EBITDA when the business tanked in 2008, 2009, and we still sold the company at a multiple of revenue. So, that is a testament to the value of IP, nothing else.
When I launched this program, this podcast, the idea was, because that's what I know, right? Intellectual property. So certainly I could talk, about that intelligently, but since a podcast is not about the hosts as much as it's about the guests, the goal behind this was really to get to intangibles being a broader topic than that. So yes, you need that brand, right?
Oh, of course, but it's all in the worship of the brand. So culture is a huge intangible. Again, I was a people person. I care deeply about my employees, my customers, and my vendors. And I really shaped a company culture that I think was the catalyst to our success. I mean, of course, my wife's brilliance in creating products that were magical, our ability to execute at a high level, but the culture itself created disproportional. A lot of my employees were mistaken for owners all the time. Listen, I had stores all over the country. I had a team of 3 to 5 people in San Diego, 3,000 miles away from my office, and they had to open the store on time, make sure it was run to the highest level. They had to generate incredible revenue. They had to treat customers right. I mean, all these things that only owners can do at a high level. So creating a company culture was one of my biggest intangibles. And I can talk about intangibles all day long because I feel that that's the magic sauce, right? When P&G acquired us, the magic fizzled. They changed the ingredients. They changed the company cultures. I mean, they started to focus more on processes than customers. I mean, this is how you kill the brand. You inadvertently squash the intangible assets of those companies. That's really where it's at.
There's an interesting contrast, though. When I was a kid in elementary school or whatever, middle school, whatever age it was, we had in English class, we would read short stories. And I remember very distinctly one short story that I only half read that was called Quality. It was about a shoe salesman who insisted on making the finest leather shoes or whatever, and essentially getting pummeled in the market. Because to a consumer, to me, when you talk about the corporate culture, the way you serve the customers, all these things are valuable. They sell the consumer. Like I'm interested in them because that's how I want to be treated. I don't want to be treated like a number, right? I want to be treated like someone who's important and special. But in this story, basically that dies. That's there's no place for that. And I think in decades past it has been like that too, right?
I wouldn't confuse quality with the customer and all that. So I think what was missing for that shoemaker was the partnership. So the shoemaker you're describing is my wife. She's the perfectionist. She is detail oriented to, ad nauseum. I mean, she will drive you nuts with the details. And if she was doing that on her own, without someone like me that was more big picture and that knew when we had to stop this insanity, she would have never gone to market, right? She would have been squashed. Same for me. A guy like me that's all big picture visionary and without something to sell, substance, it doesn't work. And when you look at a lot of successful people in business, entrepreneurial businesses, you usually find two people that come together or more, because it's hard to have both sides of the brain fire on all cylinders. And we were lucky that my wife had that side of the brain and I had the other side of the brain that was so compatible. But one without the other wouldn't have worked the same way. And I think the story you tell is missing that partner. It's like the music business. The artist on his own, genius as he can be, will never get there because he needs somebody to manage, that creative process. So
Yeah, it can't be purely about talent and it can't be purely about marketing, right? It's got to be talent that is marketed, right?
that's right. You need the business side and you need the creative side. It's what I call, my wife is the scientist and I'm the strategic side. That's why I think we were very successful, because those two things together created magic, but alone by themselves, no matter how talented we each were, wasn't enough.
I think that's probably where we should leave it for the day. My guest has been Eric Malka. Eric, the name of your book, The Razor's Edge, say it again.
On the Razor's Edge, the story of the art of shaving.
On the Razor's Edge, the story of the art of shaving. Really appreciate your being here. Definitely very insightful conversation, and I'm really glad we got a chance to meet. I have to ask, since you're Moroccan native, I have to ask, do you do the Sephardic haroset with the dates, and do you like tagines?
We just flew back from Marrakesh 3 days ago with the kids and my wife, and right now we don't want to have any tagine for a couple of more weeks, but we're over tagine. I'm not religious, but I do believe in tradition, and I do enjoy the Sephardic rituals very much, including the harosets.
I'm Ashkenazic, but the Sephardic haroset is like my favorite, and I'm a huge tagine fan. Lamb, fish, whatever.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff, man. It's good stuff.
So please invite me over.
When you're in Miami, you're invited.
Thanks so much. Really a pleasure. Thanks so much. Great to have you today.